Hi everyone, I'm Rob, head of talent or recruitment at Shapr3D, and I'm not very interesting, so I'm not going to talk for very long. I'm just here to moderate the discussion with Istvan and David, so if you could give them both a warm welcome, we'll get them to come and sit up here. Istvan and David, thank you. I'll let you guys sit next to each other, as long as you promise to play nice. Okay, great. So thank you everyone for coming. This is hopefully going to be a really nice way to get some insight from Istvan, from David. Obviously, questions from yourselves. There is a QR code if I duck, you can see. That's for Slido. So if you have any questions during this conversation, feel free to put those on there. I'll be keeping an eye on them, or at least trying to, and I can sort of jump in with those at appropriate moments, so we may leave those till the end. Okay, so if you are desperate, do not shout out. It would just help us to have a more organized, more structured conversation. So away we go. I'm excited to jump into some questions for you guys. But before we do that, it would just be really great to get a little bit more of a kind of background on you, maybe a quick high-level 1-2 minute overview of you and your companies. I think would be really helpful just to kick this off. Obviously, Istvan, I know you. I know what you do. I know your company.
Guests first.
I was just going to say, we're on home turf, so we'll let guests go first.
First of all, thank you for acknowledging the gross imbalance on the stage, 2-1. Before we start, I'm really excited about this. A group of companies have been organizing these meetups. Can everybody put up their hands who's not from Shapr, FormLabs, Colossian, Craft? Can you put your hands up? Thank God. Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm relieved. Second, can you put up your hand if you're a developer? Awesome. Product managers? Other interested humans in technology who are not from the first? Cool. All right. Thank you for indulging me in the quick survey. Okay, so I'm David. I'm originally from Hungary. I'm starting to erode my accent in English, but I don't think I'm going to get there. I live in Boston. When I lived here in Budapest until I was 22, went to study at MIT, started a company with two of my friends. We ran that for a few years, ended up selling the company to Dropbox, and then went back to to Boston, and we started FormLabs, which is a 3D printing company. And if you haven't seen, actually, there is a FormLabs machine here too that was not sponsored or given in any free way. They paid full price.
It is the best 3D printer we have ever used, seriously. And this is not a paid ad, I swear.
Thank you.
You have to play nice.
Everybody's friendly. We've always targeted professionals. The goal was to give a tool to people who want to take their ideas that is in 3D and get them printed out in a professional manner. We started with the Form 1, that was about 13 years ago, and gradually today we have an SLA, stereolithography, that's a resin-based 3D printing line, selective laser sintering, which is a powder-based printing. But what I think is really cool is that we have now 150,000 printers out in the field. We're one of the largest 3D printing companies out there, one of the only ones that is profitable and growing. And I'm very, very, very proud that today we have 140 people here in Budapest, and I get to come home very often to both visit my family and also hang out with people like you. So it's really awesome to see this crowd. That's it.
And I'm István. I'm the founder of Shapr. And we make software that makes their printers useful. We are basically reinventing what 3D design and manufacturing software should be like in 2025. In an industry where pretty much all the solutions that are mainstream were designed in the 1990s. So there's a lot to build in this industry. There's a lot of overlaps between David's and my story. Actually, we have a bunch of common friends from elementary school and from high school. And actually, his best friend was our first employee, and we were classmates in elementary school, right? And both of us started.
And I did not get any referral bonus. Just that part.
and I did not get a free printer, right? So no offense, right? And then instead of taking David's path and moving to the US, I stayed home because I really love Budapest and I wanted to build something here. That's why I started Shapr, which is my second attempt to build a CAD company. My first one failed in 2008, but again, our path will overlap again, I guess, because probably later this year we are hopefully opening our US office if everything goes well, and initially we started as an iPad-only application. Now we are available on iPad, Mac, Windows, and Apple Vision Pro, which is an absolutely miraculous product, and if you haven't tried it, you should try it. It's incredible. And initially, we were mostly focused on prosumers and small businesses, and in the last couple of years, we shifted towards enterprises. Now we are working with some of the largest companies in the world. Some huge announcements are coming, hopefully, in a few months.
It would be good to rewind time a little bit and just start to understand a bit of the journey of how you got to where you are right now. So was there an aha moment? Was there a point where you just suddenly went, okay, now it's time for me to build a company? Or did it happen organically? I don't know if you could kick us off with that, David?
Sure. So, yeah, I think let me talk about FormLabs. My previous company, actually it started at the same place, at the Media Lab at MIT, which is this kind of weird place where you have engineers and physicists and artists and designers all working together in one program. It's super weird, but also very beautiful. Definitely Google it if you haven't heard about it before. But there was a class at MIT that it's called How to Make Almost Anything. That is, to this day, I think that the best class that I've ever taken. It's taught by a professor called Neil Gershenfeld, and he basically has this idea that you have these incredibly powerful tools, laser cutters, water jet cutters, CNC machines, 3D printers, and they're mostly stuck behind usually very expensive, like companies, Fortune 500 companies, but they're not available for everybody. And so the class is about figuring out first how to use these, and then there's a second class called how to make something that can make almost anything, which gets into building these tools. And the idea is that don't take it granted that you have a very powerful tool, like take a CNC machine that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and figure out how to make it cheaper, figure out how to make it easier to use. Because most of the tools, they all start, and actually CAD is very similar, where in the beginning it was limited to mainframes, very expensive machines that took incredible amount of computation. It was just not accessible to everyone. Today, with Shapr, you can use it on your iPad. It is accessible to anybody, basically, who can, it was a couple $100. So that's kind of like how it happened. And I think from there, it's like pretty obvious that like once you start thinking about that, there's this incredible problem that most problems are physical. So, sorry, I know that software is very important, but most problems are still physical. In fact, like now, I think that the saying is that software is solved, work on hardware. I think it's really important to remember because it's time to really think. Like I think that still the most profound problems today are really rooted in hardware problems, and in order to solve them, we need a lot more people thinking and start solving these problems, and they need tools. Hardware sucks. Making hardware really, really sucks. And I think CAD is like part of it. It's hard to design things. It's hard to make them. And so there's a huge amount of problem solving left to do in this space. And from then on, it was easy to see how to, you go from there to like, all right, 3D printers. At that point, we had like one hack where Blu-ray players, if you remember, does anybody remember Blu-ray players? Anyway, they're a thing. They were a thing. And Nichia, this Japanese company, basically pioneered making a specific wavelength of laser, 4 or 5 nanometer diode lasers, very, very cheap. So if you look at the per milliwatt cost of lasers, it was like expensive, 4 or 5 nanometers, nothing, and back to a lot of money. And that enabled us to build a Form 1, which then kind of like started the revolution in resin-based 3D printing, and then we went from there.
Thank you, Istvan. And to you, or more of an
Definitely not an aha moment. It was, to be honest, when somebody asked me this question, I always say that I think it was kind of inevitable to start a company for me, or start this particular company for me. I started coding when I was a little kid. I started 3D modeling when I was a little kid. So it kind of feels like I was training my entire life to build this company. But I kind of agree with David that I think actually software is actually solved now mostly. And I think like companies like, it's really interesting that I think there is this overlap between the two companies, that on a scale of like DocuSign and SpaceX, we are like, both companies probably closer to SpaceX than to DocuSign, because of the complexity and the depth of the problems. And quite frankly, this is what made this space really, really exciting for me. After I graduated, I tried to work for a large SaaS company as an employee, but my biggest problem with being an employee was that I never really felt connected to the company's mission, and I always felt that I'm just a little part or piece of the machine, which is actually, I think it would be fine for me if I could feel this relationship to something bigger. But that company, I never really managed to create this mission-driven culture. So and then I quit my job, and then I looked around and I saw that, okay, now there are like basically no ambitious companies around in Budapest. So there are no companies that are building something meaningful, something large, that are mission-driven, that really want to like change the world, right? So basically I had two options. Either I leave the country, or I stay here and shut the fuck up and build something that will be like a company that I would like to work for, right? So that's how actually Shapr started. And this complexity, the complexity of the space was something that was really, really appealing for me. When I graduated, I seriously considered doing a PhD in physics instead of going to the industry. But I realized that I really like hard problems. I also like money. So, and somehow, like you have to find a balance. And actually in this space, I found this balance of solving really hard problems, like doing hardcore engineering, like really, really complex, deep problems, like solving these really deep problems. But we can also make money, apparently.
That's also very important, yes. So obviously during this time period, you acquired probably the amount of knowledge and experience that can take us mere mortals, decades to acquire. Was there any way you went about that knowledge acquisition? Anything you studied? Any kind of particular avenues that you felt, okay, this is what I have to do in order to get the tools I need to start this company and build this company?
One of our board members, Barry Schuler, who's was the CEO of AOL. He likes to, basically almost every board meeting, he says that we fuck our way into things. And that's exactly how I feel about learning. I don't think that there is we don't, especially in the beginning, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. In retrospective, I would say, for all the FormLabs people, we of course always knew how we were going to get to where we are today, but not really. So I think that it's actually that sort of way that a young company goes about figuring out what they should do is the reason why they don't end up solving problems the same way as the people that came before them. I don't really believe that, like, there are companies, even in 3D printing, that have been around for 30 years. I don't think they're total idiots. Now they're total idiots, but they were not total idiots 30 years ago. They were very smart people, and they got a lot of things right. But when we came around, we had the chance of like thinking about it at a different context at a different time, and it was actually very helpful to see how they failed and then going a different way about it. And I think that you cannot do that if you are extremely, like, if you know exactly how you're going to approach the problem. I'm sure that I would be able to build something today as well with the knowledge that I am, but that I acquired. But I think that it would be very different than that first time when you are just like at 100% energy, going at a roughly correct vector, but not exactly at the right direction, and then you kind of figure it out on the way.
And would you say there's a mindset shift there? You know, engineer to entrepreneur. Is there something that has to change in your mindset?
I think that you can. So I'm going to start saying some controversial things. I think that as a deeply technology-driven company's leader at any level, you have to remain somebody that is connected to the engineering problems underneath. So of course you take a different like level, and as much as I believe that I could or sometimes should write some code, I think it's probably not a good idea because I would rank very low in our software engineering team. Thank God I'm not the. I think that I would be able to get a job at FormLabs as a software engineer, maybe, but I'm not sure. But I think that the important part is that you have to be connected to those problems. Otherwise, you're kind of useless, especially somebody who needs to be close to the product and the output of the company, which is new products. That's the way that we grow. If you look at our revenue over the last 2 or 3 years, and I remove all of the numbers, all of the years, and you just look at the pillars, you can point out exactly when we launch new products, because that's how we grow. And this is not to say that the people who are in sales and marketing and the rest of the company are like not doing anything. That's not true. Obviously, without them, we would probably not be able to achieve even half of what we achieved. But you can really look at the company's growth in a technology-driven, product-driven company. That's the output of the company. That's the main output of the company, and that's how the company grows. So if you're somebody that is not connected to those problems, you end up not being relevant to the main output of the company.
And would you say similar for you, that mindset shift?
I mean, pretty much all the successful founders of the last 20 years were technical founders. I cannot think of, like, there's maybe one exception, Mark Benioff, right? The CEO and founder of Salesforce. He's a salesperson, and but he's running a CRM company, so it kind of makes sense. So he's a subject matter expert. But this is a question that I frequently get, like how did it feel to leave behind coding, and so, and quite frankly, I love to write code. Really, I really enjoyed writing code for like 16 hours a day. I loved it, but eventually I did not enjoy coding only because it's a fun puzzle to solve and it occupies your mind, but because I really enjoyed the journey of building something meaningful. And quite frankly, the joy of being an engineer for me came from the fact that I really enjoyed building something bigger, not just the code or not just the product, but it's, you know, like it's a piece of the puzzle. And if you can pick up this mindset that, okay, I'm here to build something, and I'm not here to just write code, but I'm here to build something, and I'm writing code because I'm here to build something, then suddenly you can look at the world from a different angle, and suddenly leaving behind coding is not as painful. And quite frankly, you don't even have to leave behind coding. Even in like 2020, I was still like, sometimes I was still writing some code like 5 years after I started a company. But it just, at some point of time, it was just not the most efficient way of spending my time. Just like if you're not coding like 5 days a week, it becomes like really, really hard to keep those muscles in shape. So, and to be honest, I just managed to find this joy in building the company. And also I think building a company in many ways really similar to building a software architecture, because you have to have like systems thinking. You have to think about it in a really structured way. You have to figure out the different functions. Like you have to come up with a process how to get there. So I think it's very similar, and the same patterns and the same mindset can be applied to building a company. And I think that's a big reason why we have seen so many successful engineers in tech building large companies.
Do you ever feel the urge to jump back in? If things aren't meeting expectation, is there that?
So every 2 months, I decided, okay, I will get back to coding. So I signed into GitHub. I set up my computer, and then I realized that I just don't have enough time for this, unfortunately. So, but I think at some point we will get there. Right now, life is quite busy, especially with these new enterprise clients. But I think there might be a time when I will get back to coding. Yeah.
And David, how about you? Is there ever a moment where you see the output of one of your teams, or it's not hitting a deadline, and you feel like I just need to jump in and all hands on deck?
Yeah, I was thinking about this while Istvan was talking, that I felt much more like that in my previous company, because there is something beautiful when you have everything on GitHub and like that's your product, and you can like unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, for FormLabs that's not it's very we ship very few things that are just code. We have an online dashboard product, but and there's Preform, but Preform, which is our print preparation software, doesn't really work or matter without the hardware. And then obviously there's all the embedded software that's running on the hardware. So our stack is quite tall from that perspective, and you can't really you can't have that feeling when you just pop up a server or an application and then it's running and it's great. You have some portions of it, but I don't think it's the same feeling. Yeah, the way that I like to approach it is more like we have the beauty, I guess it's the same with Shapr, that you can use your product to then make other stuff, and that's how that's where I get in. So recently I had a project for my daughter where I made for all the Hungarians here, if you know what dia films are, I think for our generation it was a thing where at night you would instead of a story time, you would have these 35mm films, and you could kind of walk through it, and your parents would read it to you. It's very cute. But anyway, these really suck because they're very heavy and they burn you, whatever. It's and they don't even work on 120 volts in the United States. So I made one that's fully 3D printed with just a flashlight that you put into it, and all the other parts are 3D printed. The lenses are 3D printed. It's super cool. So that's the kind of way that I like. It's really good for also seeing how it is to use the product as a customer, and you can really get super frustrated, and then I generate a lot of bugs, and then everybody's very upset with me.
And so far these have been obviously very lovely stories to hear, and we've talked about all the nice things. I would like to talk a bit about compromises and technical compromises specifically. Just to give you a second to think, have there been at any points during this journey some technical compromises that you've had to make, and looking back on them now, do you feel that was the right choice? Would you do anything differently with those compromises? David, do you want to kick us off? Or?
I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, or I'm thinking about it differently, but I think that technology in general, you make compromise all the time. We call them trade matrices, where you have literally every single product is made out of 1,000 decisions. And people always think that oh, when did you come up with the new Form 4 and the specs and whatever? And that's not how it works. Yeah, you put down a spec and then you start trying to make it happen. But a product is the accumulation of 1,000 decisions that you make along the way. And for hardware, it's even worse because it's literally a 3-year-long product. For us, it takes 3 to 4 years to make a new hardware product. And probably there is 5,000 decisions during it. And every single decision is a trade-off. We could have better on aspects 1, 2, and 3, and it's usually worse. There's very few, it's not called a decision or a trade matrix if it's a Pareto, this one is just better than sure, but that's not it. Nobody talks about it. But there's 1,000 decisions where you have to go left or right, and you need to make. So do I feel like maybe the wrong decision on the Form 3 choosing instead of going with the Form 4, it uses a screen, and Form 3 used a 1D line scanner with a laser? Yes, in the retrospective, I think that we should have gone with a screen. Do I feel like we've done our best effort making that trade matrix decision at that point? Yeah, I do. And so it's hard to unless you're a really shitty engineering group that doesn't know what they're doing, and you're why the fuck did we choose this thing that nobody thought about? Now, I don't think you learned a lot, of course, but then you try to make 600 good decisions and 300 mediocre and 100 bad ones, and then good product.
This is probably basically the question is really like eventually it goes down to the art and science of product management. Like every decision that you make is a compromise, because there is always like 1,000 different ways how you can solve a product, and how good a solution is very much depends on the context, like who is the audience, what are the business objectives. Like it's like really a zillion different parameters, and it's, if there was a magical tool that could make the perfect decision, or a framework, or there could be like a rigorous logical process to come up with the right solution for every single problem, it would be really easy to build a successful company. So obviously, of course, every week, every day we are making compromises. But what I've learned over the last few years is that eventually the excellence is uniform across an organization. When I visit Apple, or when we go to any of our customers' offices or factories, you can exactly you can see that the quality of their factories or the quality of their headquarters is the exact same quality as their product's quality. It's the same, right? And eventually this is basically the byproduct of their culture. And if you basically the best way in the long run, I mean, obviously you can't manage 120 or 200 or 500 or 800 people directly on a daily basis, right? So the only way to make sure that you are making the right compromises is to imprint your view on the world and on your view on the industry and your view on the problems that you are trying to solve in a company's culture. And eventually the company's culture will just result the kind of compromises, if you build it right, that you would make by yourself. So I think this is what is really, really easy to mess up, even in the first, probably first year or first couple of years of building a company, is not setting that culture right, not building that culture that will build the product that you want to build and will make the compromises that you want to make.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about decision making. Just for a second, I want you to imagine you have your devil and your angel, one on each shoulder. If one is your technical background and the other is your business leadership acumen that you've developed over this and through this journey, which voice do you find yourself listening to more these days?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I really don't think about it that way, because it is any given decision. Again, just going back to the last couple decisions that we had to make, that was a long debate. Should we make a product? There is 1,000 reasons from a technology perspective. Again, I don't know where technology ends and business begins. It's like a continuum for me, but there's 1,000 reasons to do it. There's 500 reasons not to. And from business reason, the same thing. And then at the end, you need to look at it in context from the resources that I have: money, people, knowledge, very specific talent that would allow me to make it. Can we make it? Are we going to be the most successful company possible by making that specific product? And that you can substitute that with a feature, you can substitute that with a technology trade-off, you can substitute that with whatever, but it's always an optimization problem with the resources that you have. So I don't think that it's about, I don't know how to, at the end it's a lot of debate, and I think that all great cultures and engineering-driven cultures are based on heavy debate that not everybody enjoys, but I don't think that there's a way around them. Trying to wrestle with these really difficult problems, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to tell you whether it was good or bad. I mean, the markets will tell you, is it going to succeed or not? But other than that, nobody's going to give you a golden ribbon or red dot in Hungary or whatever, that you made the right decision. And so I don't think that I have this split personality that I'm listening to ooh, that would be a cool problem to solve in technology, or ooh, we're going to be able to seize the gross profit on this product. It's a combination of all of those things. And do we think that we can succeed and long term? And is this an edge that we're actually great at? Could we build a CAD software? I think we could fucking build a CAD software. We have some great people, but would that be the right thing for our organization? Is that what people are signed up for? Is that the best use of our resources? No, it's not. So don't worry, it's okay.
We're safe for now. Istvan?
Well, anybody can build a 3D printer today, so.
I would be the first one to admit, but it would be pretty shitty. I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, so I agree with David that I think the question doesn't make much sense. People, no offense, Rob. Sorry, but I think what I often find is that most people have like a completely like distorted and false sense of what leading a company means, and people just think that like CEOs and C-levels should just like sit on their golden throne behind the scenes, just hire great people and step back and just let everybody do their job and just do their CEO things, which is whatever that is, right? Like, and quite frankly, that's what I thought as well in the first couple of years of the company, that maybe in the future, like that's how I should run the company. And eventually it turns out that like literally no successful CEOs are running their companies like that. I think one of the best examples is the CEO of Shopify, Toby Lutka, who is still today, like Shopify is like a $100 billion company today, right? And the founder CEO is still he's not only involved with the design reviews, but he's literally reviewing every single API call on the design reviews, like how the architecture of the software will be designed, right? So and I think a lot of like very often people think that this is because they are control freaks and they want to decide like which API to use and stuff like that's not why people are doing it, or that's not why high functioning managers are doing this. It is because running a business is about making sure that everybody has like the maximum context, and you are helping people connecting the dots, and you are helping the entire organization to like think holistically about the problems that we are solving. And the thing is that very few people can help with that, and usually great managers and great C-levels and great CEOs can do that and can help the organizations having like the maximum amount of context that is necessary to make the right decisions, right? So I don't think that there is such thing as like a business mind or an engineering mind. Like I heavily rely on my knowledge of the Shapr3D code base and the product and the industry and the venture capital market and the hiring market and the financial forecast of the company and so on. So it's really about like trying to like connect all these dots together, and there's no such thing as like business mindset. Have you ever seen a successful founder coming out from a business school? Not too many, right? Despite there are a lot of people coming out from business schools every year.
Maybe just one thing, because I know that for the few people from FormLabs, this is something that like we literally talk about every day, and I think you gave me the permission to go into this a little bit more. I think it's easy to like, I'm trying to imagine somebody sitting here talking to, two bald guys talking about bullshit, about like, and they built like tiny little companies that are, hopefully going to be around for a little bit. But when we talk to, recently we get a lot of feedback we do design reviews every week, every single product line, and it's very involved. And I think it's tough for a lot of people, a lot of engineers to be participating in them, because it can really feel like you're trying to understand every single detail. But for the same reasons that I think István did a great job explaining, it's important to bring that context and trying to help everybody go in the same direction with the minimal amount of friction. So we started talking to some people that did this really well. So we recently have been working with a former Apple VP of engineering, and it's amazing to hear, and I'm going to try to do my best to explain, but The same thing is happening at Apple. I would say that the most successful technology company today, at scale, they're still doing the same thing. There are 1,000-person organizations where an individual leader is basically reviewing every single engineering decision. And yes, sure, the next level up, by the time it gets to Tim Cook, they're not going to be talking about every single drawing, but you can be sure that every single product that goes out, Tim Cook or the person below them knows every single detail about the product, and they know that week what are the things that are not going well, whether it's at risk of shipping at a certain date or not, and even one level deeper, what is the reason and what is the possible solution that by next week they're going to decide on whether that's happening or not. And it's really convincing. Where actually this is, I hope maybe we can share something at a later point here about that, but it's a very convincing thing that that's how successful technologies are built, because it is an integration going back all the way to how to make almost anything. Every single week you learn a different, it's a 12-week class, every single week you learn a different technology, laser cutter, water jet cutter, whatever. Last 2 weeks is integration, which means that you have to build something, a device that uses every single technology, and that's when you realize that building products is all about integrations. Using individual tools is easy, everybody can do that. Making something that works together, that's the hard part, and that's what requires all this work to summarize.
And while we're still talking about skills, just want to rewind to something you said, Istvan. You know, not too many founders are coming out of business school. Is there a skill that you could maybe highlight that you've had to develop over this journey for you that you think you probably don't learn in business school?
Yes, it's a really long list, I think, at least for me, for sure, right? For example, I think one of the probably the most important, like the number one skill that you have to pick up as a founder is recruitment. And recruitment is just hard because, especially I think for a software engineers tend to be quite rational, right? Recruitment is definitely not about rational thinking, it's about emotions. Recruitment is a bit like, you remember that scene from Forrest Gump, right? When he starts running, he just keeps running, and he does this crazy thing, and he cannot even explain why he's running. He just runs, he keeps running. And a bunch of people starts joining him. And then it's really hard to explain why they are joining him, but he almost like builds his cult, right? And actually, like running a company and building a team is somehow like similar to that, right? Like you are doing, especially when you are building something really ambitious. Like you are building something really crazy, something really ambitious, and you have to convince a bunch of really smart people that this is the best thing in the world, and they should join and they should work together with you on this incredibly hard and incredibly ambitious problem. It's not trivial to learn. At least for me, it was really difficult to learn, like how to explain what I have in my mind and how to make it appealing enough to people so that they are going to quit their jobs. Sometimes they are going to quit their jobs in the other side of the world, and they will move to Budapest just to work on this super exciting thing that we have here. So I think recruitment is really one of these skills that there's probably still a lot that I could learn in recruitment. But I think like generally the best founders and best CEOs are really good at recruitment. So I could learn a lot from you, Rob, right?
Well, I think the new Shapr logo might have to be Run Forest Run. I think that's might be what we have to go with.
Yeah. So I think recruitment definitely. I had to learn basic accounting. I had no idea about accounting before I started Shapr. I didn't know how to read a P&L sheet. I didn't know what's the difference between cash flow and revenue. I had no idea. You just have to learn this kind of stuff. You have to learn basic legal stuff. You have to be able to understand what is a term sheet, what is a shareholders agreement. Like you have to read a bunch of legal documents, master service agreements with enterprise companies, investment documents. So it's really, you just have to be like really you have to learn literally everything a little bit, just to have enough context around the company. And you will never be, and this is also a little bit frustrating because it also means that you will be always like the third best person in the company in everything, but you will never be like exceptionally good at anything. But you have to be the third best at everything.
You say being third best, but I think if I asked or took a poll here of everybody listening to you guys, they would say you seem like very confident individuals who have courage in your convictions and know what you're doing.
That has nothing to do with how good you are at things. I don't know. I'm very good at that, but thank you.
But you're putting on a good show. But I wondered if there was ever...
Actually, wait, but that one is exactly, I deeply agree with what you said. I would say that the meta version of that is learning how to sell. Learning how to sell to future employees, learning how to sell to people that want to invest in your company, learning how to sell to customers. That was the hardest thing for me. Like I don't think that that's something that I would have thought that that's something that I need to think about a lot, but I think that that's basically
especially I think with our cultural background, I think the great sales culture is just non-existent in Central Europe. And I think what we have in mind about sales is completely off. Like I think like probably most of you guys, when I see like a great salesperson, you have this like super charismatic guy with driving a Porsche and wearing a Rolex, right? And like pushing down some really shitty product on the throat of the customer for $1 zillion. And the best salespeople are literally the exact opposite of this, maybe except the Rolex, because they have a lot of money because they are really good at sales. But like I had no idea what good sales culture looks like, and it was really, really tough for me to learn, to be honest. I mean, I'm not exceptional at it. Like there's still a lot to learn.
You're underselling yourself there, István.
Oh, I appreciate it, but I'm really not very good at it. Now we are running a VP sales search, and now I know what great salespeople look like. If anybody knows a great VP of sales,
talk to me.
Yeah, or me. Yeah. So and now I really know what good looks like. There's a lot we could learn for sure.
But any moments of self-doubt?
How about pivot tables? I think that pivot tables were really important for me to master.
Definitely.
And our next session will be an Excel workshop. Yeah. I was going to touch on, because obviously we're talking about confidence in selling, but beneath that, sometimes there are moments of doubt. I assume some quite big moments of doubt. David, is there one you maybe could highlight that you've had?
I hate to disappoint, but I'm an extremely anxious and paranoid person. So I'm constantly, I really, like this is not a joke, like I'm very worried about us immolating on a 12-month basis ever. Not that there is a real reason to think so. We were literally talking today about a situation where like just thinking one step ahead, we can see how a situation develops, and it would be unfavorable to FormLabs. And that's how I think about almost every decision, what are the worst case scenarios and how this can impact us. So like, again, we made a ton of terrible choices over the years. None of them were fatal so far. I think the larger we get, the bigger bets we make, which will put even greater risk at us self-immolating. And then I think that, but unless you think that way, I don't think that you can keep on growing a company. In technology, that's, how many people here read the Three-Body Problem? Okay, good. It's my people. Three-Body Problem. It's a Chinese sci-fi. It's a really, really good book. Highly recommend it. Anyway, it's the same thing where like you put up your hand in the universe that you're here, then you're immediately at danger of like getting killed. And that's the same in technology. And every single time you make something that is amazing, like I think that it's not an accident that it's a Chinese sci-fi novel, because in China, this is actually something that I just understood this year, that there is a very deep set culture difference between Chinese and Western kind of like way of looking at technology. If I see a group of people being successful at something, my immediate reaction is like, oh shit, they figured it out. Let's do something else. They literally are like, whoa, they're successful. I'm gonna go and beat them. That's like a mentality, and I think that that's in technology very common. That like if you are doing something well and you feel like you're successful, you're one step away from dying. and you need to immediately start doing something new and figure out how you're going to get ahead, otherwise you're going to be left behind. And the world is full of mediocre, shitty companies. And that's the worst thing, that like these companies don't die. They just stagnate and get shitty, and they very slowly die. That's the worst way of going out in my book. So.
And on that light note, István.
Yeah, what was the question, sir?
Self-doubt, anything?
Self-doubt? A lot. Like, where to start, to be honest. I mean, look, overall, like all the odds when you are starting a company, especially when you are early, like literally all the odds are against you, like all of them. And you have to live in this cognitive dissonance of like being like 100% convinced that you are going to succeed, yet being aware that it's very unlikely that you are going to succeed. And there is no other way around it. And it's torturing. It's extremely painful. Yet this is how successful companies are built. And like living with this for years and years and years, it's taxing, mentally taxing, and it always like you are basically going from the highest emotional heights to the lowest emotional lows every day. And one day you are winning and everything is working out well. Next day the market is crashing and you are going to shit. And then the next day it turns out that it was actually fake news and everything is going well. And like this emotional roller coaster, and obviously it is getting better over time as the company is getting more mature. But still, I think as a leader, as a founder, it's always extremely challenging.
Thank you. We only have a few minutes left. I want to play a quick game just for the last few minutes. So the rules are, I'm going to give you some short questions. I want some short, snappy answers. So we've got to be quick. Don't think too hard before you answer.
Do people have questions also?
Yeah, well, I've been going through some of them as we've been going on. I'll just do these quickly because we don't have too much time. So first line of code you ever wrote, David?
First line of code. QBasic, triangle sorting, UI, in elementary school, I don't know.
István?
Commodore 64, 1994, basic, and it was 2 lines with print snail.
Oh, does logo count? That's not really cool though.
What worst bug you've ever shipped?
Worst bug? Yeah, I mean, I took our entire service down several times of my last company. The worst one, we corrupted half of our database and it took us 3 days to recover. That was bad.
Ouch. István?
Hard. I don't know. Like, thank God I never had like a massive blunder during my engineering career. I don't know. Like in the early days of Shapr, like I mean, look, like the first like 4 years of product development, that was all of it, right? Like every single release, to be honest.
Okay. One book every founder should read. David?
Only the Paranoid Survive by a Hungarian. Former Intel CEO, Hungarian guy. Andy Grove. Yeah.
Bargaining for advantage. Bargaining is one of the most useful skills ever outside business as well. Bargaining for advantage. Fantastic book.
Favorite software you can't live without? Shapr3D excluded, obviously. Favorite software you can't live without?
Can't live without? Oh, Apple Notes.
It's good.
Oh.
Preform.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing instead?
Another company.
Another cat company. Seriously.
Just on a totally random one, if they were making a movie about your life, who would play you?
I don't. Please don't make a movie about my life. Thank you.
István, and you can't say Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
Okay. And just to finish us off, worst piece of startup advice you've ever received, so we all don't listen to that if we get given it.
Hire great people and get out of their way.
hire professional managers.
And just to finish us off, thank you very much for answering all of my questions, some of which were almost veering into therapy at different points. So I really appreciate you giving those honest, frank answers. And thank you guys for your time listening. We do have an agenda to stick to, so obviously we'll jump on to the next piece, but I'll pass to Nama to share with you what it will be.